Okay, so there's something really big brewing, and it's happening a little under the radar. It's this quiet but massive shift that connects psychedelic research, the politics of marijuana, and the future of how we regulate all of it. Today, we're going to connect the dots on this major federal pivot. Let's dive in. So, we're going to kick things off with that unique welcome from one of our sources. Why? Because honestly, it just sets the perfect tone for today. We are about to unpack a pretty seismic shift in federal policy, a story that's unfolding on three different fronts all at the same time. Let's break it all down. So, our first front is all about the science. And you might be surprised by which agency is kind of leading the charge here. It's the Drug Enforcement Administration, the DEA. They are, quietly but very deliberately, setting the stage for a huge expansion in psychedelics research. Okay, so to really get what's happening, you gotta understand this thing called a production quota. Think of it like a permission slip from the DEA. It dictates exactly how much of a controlled substance can be legally made for research in a given year. And when this number starts to move, especially when it moves a lot, it's not just some minor tweak, it's a huge signal that the official thinking is changing. So what's behind all this? I mean, what's the goal here? Well, the DEA has actually been pretty open about it. Their official reason is to open the floodgates for scientists to seriously look into these substances as potential game changers for things like PTSD and depression, conditions that, affect millions and millions of people. And the scale of this change is just, well, it's staggering. Just look at the numbers for 5-MeO-DMT. In 2021, the quota was a tiny 35 grams, barely anything. Now, for 2026, the DEA is proposing 30,000 grams. That isn't just a jump, that's a rocket launch. It shows a complete U-turn in their approach to psychedelic research. And hey, this isn't a one-off thing, right? It's not just about one substance. Methylone, which is similar to MDMA, is set to go from around 5,000 grams to 30,000. Psilocybin is getting a huge boost, too. What you're seeing here is the DEA basically giving a massive green light to a whole new era of scientific study. All right, so let's park the science for a second and jump from the lab over to the political arena. Because while all this research is getting ramped up, there's a parallel and just as important conversation happening in Washington, D.C. about changing the fundamental legal status of marijuana itself. Now, you see this quote right here. This is from a high-ranking Republican in the House, and it's a huge deal. It tells you that the whole political calculation is changing. For some really key players, federal marijuana reform isn't a question of if anymore, it's a question of when. So, you have to ask, why the big shift? What's going on? Well, it's not just one thing. This change is being fueled by this really potent mix of arguments, framing cannabis as a safer alternative to opioids, talking about it as a way to give better care to our veterans, and leaning on that core conservative idea of states' rights. The entire political landscape on this issue has been totally redrawn. Okay, so you've got the science moving forward and you've got the politics shifting. So that brings up the next logical problem, regulation. As the idea of federal change gets more and more real, policy experts are already starting to wrestle with the nitty-gritty details of what a world after prohibition would actually look like. And here's the problem in a nutshell. A conservative think tank has the perfect term for it, a regulatory free-for-all. Because right now, without any federal oversight, we've just got this chaotic, confusing patchwork of state laws. It's a mess, and it can be a really confusing and even risky landscape for people. Yeah, in this table right here, it shows you exactly what that free-for-all looks like in the real world. The National Institutes of Health, the NIH, has identified 12 potential health issues. But the warnings you see on a product, that completely depends on what state you're in. Some states give you a lot of detail. In others, you get almost nothing. It's basically the Wild West for consumer safety. So what's the fix? Well, the solution being proposed is to bring in the big guns, a federal heavyweight like the CDC or the Surgeon General. The idea is to have them create a single, clear, national standard for warning labels, to create the same kind of consistency we expect from any other product. So we've looked at three things: a scientific revolution, a political evolution, and now a regulatory reckoning. Let's pull the camera back and look at how these three powerful forces are all starting to merge into one single massive wave of change. And this is the real heart of the story. These three movements aren't just happening at the same time by coincidence, they are feeding off each other. The science is creating new political possibilities. The politics is opening the door for change. And that's forcing the regulators to start drawing a map for a totally new reality. It's a perfect storm. Which brings us to one massive history and the making question. With the ground shifting so dramatically on all these fronts, the scientific, the political, and the regulatory, are we actually witnessing the beginning of the end for federal prohibition as we've known it? The answer is still unfolding right before our eyes. Thanks for watching.